Imagine running for your life. You are sprinting down this cobblestone street, and you are being chased by this terrifying, bloodthirsty creature.
Right, the classic nightmare scenario.
Exactly. And you finally reach the safety of the town ferry, which is, the absolute only way off this island.
You're one ticket out.
Right. So you grab the gate, you yank it, and it's padlocked.
Oh, no.
And it's not because the monster locked it. It's literally because the local town council didn't approve the overtime budget to keep the ferry operator on the clock past 6 p.m.
That is that is perfectly frustrating.
It is. And that right there, that specific collision of sheer existential terror and incredibly mundane, frustrating local bureaucracy, that is arguably one of the hardest tones to pull off in all of storytelling.
Oh, absolutely. Blending those two reactions is just a massive undertaking. I mean, the horror comedy is the holy grail of tonal balance.
Because usually the wires in your brain just send one clear signal to your body, right? You see a monster, you scream. You watch a zoning board meeting go totally off the rails, you laugh.
Right. They are two completely different physiological responses. And if the joke is, too broad or too goofy, the monster suddenly feels like a cartoon. It just isn't scary anymore.
Yeah, you lose the stakes completely.
Exactly. But on the flip side, if the monster is too visceral or if the dread is too heavy, the audience becomes physically too tense to actually laugh at any of the jokes.
You're basically asking the viewer to hold two completely opposing emotional states at the exact same time. Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive.
We have a really good one today.
We do. We are looking at an absolute masterclass in this exact high-wire act. We are unpacking a fascinating piece from Polygon, and it details how creator Katie Dippold built Apple TV's incredibly inventive new series, Widow's Bay.
It's such a unique show.
It really is. So we are going to deconstruct how she took the DNA of Stephen King, the incredibly stubborn politicians of Steven Spielberg's Jaws, and the petty grievances of network sitcoms, and used all of that to build something totally unique for you, the viewer.
It's a wild combination of influences.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even begin to look at the monsters that are chasing the residents around, we really have to understand the ground they're running on.
The setting is everything here.
Yeah, the island setting itself is the absolute foundation of why this tone actually works.
Well, because in horror, the environment is never just a passive backdrop, The setting is an active participant in the dread.
Right.
And to really understand how Widow's Bay weaponizes its setting, you have to look at Katie Dippold's background. I mean, she has major comedy and supernatural blockbuster experience.
Because she co-wrote the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot, right?
Exactly. But the actual creative seed for Widow's Bay is so unexpected. Like, it didn't start as a horror pitch at all.
Not even close.
Yeah.
She was originally trying to break into network television by writing a spec script for the sitcom Parks and Recreation.
Which is just wild to think about.
I know. And for anyone not deep in the TV writing weeds, a spec script is essentially this unsolicited practice episode you write to prove that you can perfectly mimic the voice of an existing show.
Right. You're trying to show you can match their exact comedic rhythm.
Exactly. So she is actively training her brain to write about mundane municipal bureaucracy. She is figuring out the comedic engine of small-town meetings and incredibly petty local grievances and just general government dysfunction.
And she takes that intensely grounded, hyper-local, comedic framework. I mean, the exact kind of setting where people will literally scream at each other over a proposed stop sign.
Yeah, pure Parks and Rec energy.
Right. And she drops it onto an isolated New England island that is being systematically targeted by supernatural forces.
And the comedy comes entirely from the friction between those two realities. Like, the characters are dealing with literal ghosts, but they're processing them with the exact same annoyance they'd use for a neighbor whose dog just won't stop barking.
It's brilliant.
Now, I can already hear you listening to this at home and shouting at your audio player. You're probably thinking, an isolated, moody island community in New England, plagued by supernatural forces, dealing with the breakdown of local leadership.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
That sounds completely 100% identical to Mike Flanagan's massive hit Netflix miniseries, Midnight Mass.
Yeah, on paper, the parallels are undeniably there. And the Polygon piece actually addresses this elephant in the room head on.
Oh, they do?
Yeah. Dippold is actually a huge fan of Flanagan's work, but Midnight Mass was not the blueprint here at all. She was pulling her inspiration from the absolute bedrock of modern suspense.
Which is?
She points directly to Steven Spielberg's Jaws and the writing of Stephen King.
Oh, wow. The Stephen King influence makes so much sense, and it's so well executed because she isn't just ripping off his plots.
Right, she isn't just doing a cover band version of his story.
Exactly. There's no telekinetic teenager covered in pig's blood. There's no killer clown hiding in the sewer.
Oh.
She is studying the actual mechanics of his world building.
Yes.
She's adopting his very specific strategy for making a town feel incredibly nostalgic and cozy before he unleashes the nightmare.
What's fascinating here is how Dippold utilizes that nostalgia to make the town feel completely lived in before she tears it apart. I mean, she focuses on the microscopic, everyday details of the community.
Like the way King does.
Exactly. Think about how Stephen King writes. He will literally spend 50 pages explaining the history of a local hardware store and, like, the very specific grudges held by the guy who runs the cash register.
And you eat it up as a reader.
You do, because you, as a reader or viewer, you simply do not care if a town is being attacked by a monster if you don't believe in the town first. The horror has zero stakes if the community just feels like a cardboard movie set.
That is so true. You have to genuinely love the local diner, and you have to love the grumpy waitress who works there long before that local diner actually gets smashed to pieces by a demon.
That's exactly how you build what they call cozy dread.
Cozy dread, I love that phrase. And Dippold populates Widow's Bay with these hyper-specific King-esque archetypes to really ground the absurdity of the monsters.
Right, like Wick.
Yes. You have this incredibly surly old-timer named Wick, played by Stephen Root, who is just fundamentally annoyed by everything.
He is so funny in this.
He really is. And then you have a very stoic police officer played by Kevin Carroll. And these characters, they become the anchors for the audience.
Because when the supernatural chaos starts happening, they push back against it in their own highly specific, hyper-local ways.
Exactly. Like, Wick isn't worried about his eternal soul. He's worried about a monster literally ruining his lawn.
Which creates this really brilliant sense of claustrophobia. They are dealing with these massive apocalyptic threats, but their worldview remains incredibly narrow.
And that claustrophobia, it isn't just psychological, it is entirely geographical, too. I actually look at this New England island setting like a classic locked room mystery, but executed on a municipal scale.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, think about an Agatha Christie novel. The tension comes from the fact that the study door is bolted from the inside, right?
Right. The killer is in the room with us.
Exactly. And nobody can leave until the mystery is solved. But in Widow's Bay, the ocean is the locked door. The geography itself physically traps the characters with the threat.
They are completely isolated.
When the demons show up, they can't just call an Uber, jump on the interstate, and drive across state lines to a cheap motel. They are stuck on this rock. The water is the walls.
That municipal locked room concept is vital, because a trapped town is really only as capable of surviving as the people holding the keys.
That is a great point.
When the geography physically prevents the residents from fleeing, you have to examine the bureaucratic obstacle that is actively keeping them in danger. And this is where Dippold taps directly into that Steven Spielberg influence we mentioned earlier.
Oh, yes. We definitely have to talk about Mayor Tom Loftus. He is played so brilliantly by Matthew Rhys.
He steals every scene he's in.
He really does. So the mayor has this grand, overarching vision for the island. He desperately wants to transform this sleepy, economically depressed town into a booming, high-end tourist destination.
Right. He's got big plans.
Huge plans. And he is stubbornly holding on to this economic dream in spite of the very obvious, very lethal ghosts and demons that are currently setting up shop in his town.
And this is where the Jaws connection moves from a subtle homage to a very direct structural parallel.
How so?
Well, Dippold explicitly states that they talked a lot about Jaws in the writer's room. They wanted Widow's Bay to feel exactly like Amity Island. You know, charming, idyllic, but with a palpable, sickening sense that something terrible is lurking just beneath the surface.
I could totally see that.
And Mayor Loftus is explicitly framed as the modern comedic update of Larry Vaughn.
Ah, the infamous Mayor Vaughn. The man who insisted on keeping the beaches open on the 4th of July because the summer tourist dollars were more important than the safety of the actual swimmers.
Exactly. He is the ultimate cinematic avatar of prioritizing the local economy over human safety.
Right. He is the antagonist in a suit who just refuses to let the heroes handle the monster.
He suppresses the danger just to protect real estate values.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit. Comparing Loftus directly to Vaughn in Jaws feels a little unfair to our guy in Widow's Bay.
Unfair how?
Well, Mayor Vaughn is looking at a giant, visible killer shark that is actively leaving massive bite marks on teenagers, and he is just straight up denying it. That is pure, undeniable criminal negligence.
That's true.
But in Widow's Bay, Mayor Loftus is downplaying a supposed demonic curse. He's waving it off as mere local superstition. And honestly, if you look at it from a politician's perspective, that is actually a completely rational response.
Oh, I see. You're arguing that Loftus is just practicing common sense governance.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine walking into your local mayor's office right now and saying, "Mr. Mayor, we can't open the new shopping mall next week because the construction site is infested with sea hags."
They would throw you out.
The mayor's going to politely usher you out of the building and open the mall anyway. So Loftus isn't quite as unscrupulous as Vaughn because for a really long time, he is just dealing with rumors of the supernatural.
That's a fair point.
It makes total sense for a guy focused on economic recovery to ignore town gossip right up until the exact point where a demon is literally staring him in the face.
And the source material actually backs up that distinction perfectly. Loftus is not written as a cartoonish villain who wants people to die.
Right.
The Polygon piece notes that once those demons are finally in his face, once he can no longer rationally deny the threat using municipal logic, Loftus actually springs into action.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, he drops the denial and does the absolute best he can with his incredibly limited bureaucratic capabilities. He tries to fight back using the tools of a local politician.
Which is such an inherently funny image. Just a guy in a sensible sweater trying to figure out how to legislate a ghost out of existence.
Literally trying to find a zoning ordinance that applies to the undead.
Yes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a masterstroke of the horror comedy genre. Horror traditionally uses these highly pragmatic, economy-focused politicians to ground the supernatural chaos in an everyday, deeply frustrating reality.
It gives you something real to grab onto.
Exactly. It gives you, the viewer, something tangible to be annoyed by. Because you might never know what it is like to run from a sea hag.
Let's hope not.
But you absolutely know what it is like to deal with a stubborn, local bureaucrat who just refuses to listen to reason or approve a basic permit.
Oh, definitely.
By leaning into that universal frustration, the show completely bridges the gap between the mundane and the monstrous.
But you know, the bureaucracy is really just the appetizer here. Because eventually, the rationalizations have to fail. The bureaucratic denial collapses under the weight of the evidence, and the monsters finally attack.
They always do.
And this is the absolute critical juncture for Widow's Bay. When the attack happens, how does the show successfully deliver both genuine, heart-pounding terror and laugh-out-loud comedy without ruining the stakes for either one?
It all comes down to execution. The concept of a bureaucrat fighting a monster only gets you so far on the page. The actor actually has to land the plane.
Right.
And the secret weapon of Widow's Bay lies entirely in the mechanics of Matthew Rice's performance as Mayor Loftus.
The interview spends a ton of time breaking down his approach, and for very good reason. Reese channels this incredibly distinct mix of what they call scaredy-cat jumpiness, right alongside this genuine, unyielding ambition.
He balances it so well.
He is deeply, profoundly terrified of what is happening to his town, but he still desperately wants those tourist dollars. He is constantly oscillating between pure survival instinct and local pride.
And Dippold gives Reese the highest possible praise for how he navigates this exact tone. She points out that he has pitch-perfect comedic timing, but the mechanism making it work is that he is never actually going for a joke.
Yes.
He never breaks character to let the audience know he's in on the comedy.
That distinction is so crucial. When he screams in the show, he's not winking at the camera. He's not doing a goofy, exaggerated pratfall. Dippold says he is just playing the emotion of the scene as truthfully as possible.
But he subconsciously understands exactly what makes his truthful reaction funny from an external perspective. And the overarching structure of the show really demands immense emotional endurance from him to maintain that sincerity. Because they are operating on a 10-episode season built around a Monster of the Week format. So over the course of these 10 episodes, Mayor Loftus is being pursued by an absurd, rotating variety of threats.
What kind of threats are we talking about?
We're talking hordes of zombies, actual literal sea hags, and even a hulking Michael Myers-esque boogeyman.
Wow. It is just a relentless, nonstop gauntlet of supernatural trauma for this poor politician.
It really is. And to make sure this relentless gauntlet didn't just become exhausting for the viewer, the production brought in some seriously high-pedigree directors to give Reese the safety net to experiment with his reactions.
Who did they bring in?
They brought in Hiro Murai, who directed some of the most surreal, tone-bending episodes of Atlanta.
Oh, Atlanta's incredible.
And Sam Donovan, who worked on the incredible corporate sci-fi thriller Severance.
That is quite the lineup.
Right. Both of those shows are famous for taking deeply weird, unsettling concepts and treating them with deadpan, mundane sincerity. These are directors who fundamentally understand how to navigate bizarre tonal shifts without losing the reality of the characters.
And having that kind of directorial support gave Reese the freedom to just let loose. There was this brilliant quote from him in the interview where he explains his preparation for the sheer volume of screaming the role required.
What did he say?
He says, "I've had a lifetime's practice of screaming. Screaming at children, screaming at myself, screaming or howling at the moon."
Wow.
Right. He essentially says that because these characters are placed in such unbelievably extreme situations, his physical reaction had to be equally extreme. He took all the pent-up repressed stress of normal adult life and finally found an outlet for it.
He literally takes the very real internal pressure cooker of daily life, the traffic, the arguments, the stress, and he vents it entirely into these moments of supernatural terror.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Why is that funny?
Right, why do we laugh at that?
Why is watching a grown man scream in genuine, truthful terror comedic to us as an audience? I was thinking about the psychology of this, and the best analogy I can come up with is watching someone slip on a patch of ice in the winter.
Oh, the absolute classic slapstick setup. A person loses their footing, their arms flail, and they go down.
Right. But I want you to really think about the internal reality of the person actually falling. When you step on a patch of black ice and your feet suddenly fly up from under you, for that split second, you're experiencing pure, unadulterated panic.
Your heart just stops.
Your brain screams, "This is it. I'm going to shatter my spine. I am in mortal danger." It is a moment of genuine, terrifying loss of physical control. But from the outside, like if I am standing safely across the street watching you fall.
From across the street, watching someone's arms frantically windmill in the air while their legs scramble for traction is undeniably, objectively hilarious.
Exactly. The physical reaction of pure terror is funny strictly because of the psychological distance between the subject and the observer. Matthew Rice is the guy slipping on the ice.
That makes total sense.
He is playing the absolute, truthful panic of a man whose beloved town is being invaded by sea hags. His heart rate is up, his terror is real. But because you and I are completely safe on our couches at home, watching him frantically windmill his arms to survive, we get to laugh at the sheer extremity of his survival instinct.
And if he wasn't sincere, it wouldn't work.
Right. If he winked at us, or if he pretended to slip on purpose just to get a laugh, it wouldn't be funny, it would just be pantomime. The comedy requires his absolute, unwavering sincerity.
This raises an important question about the actor's craft, though.
What's that?
Where does an actor actually draw that level of sincerity from? How do you fuel that kind of genuine, primal, slipping on the ice reaction to something as absurd as a sea hag take after take across a grueling 10-episode shoot? You just can't fake that level of adrenaline.
You really have to reach deep into your own psychological basement to find the things that actually terrify you.
And in the interview, Rise is very candid about exactly what is hiding in his basement. He details his own personal horror influences, specifically pointing to the films he watched as a child.
Oh, childhood trauma.
Exactly. He admits that he is still deeply haunted by the movies he shouldn't have been allowed to watch at such a young age.
Look, we have all been there. Everyone has that one VHS tape they watched at a middle school sleepover that completely ruined them for a solid month.
Oh, absolutely. But for Rice, his trauma came from a heavy rotation of undisputed, heavy-hitting classics. He names Poltergeist, Amityville Horror, The Omen, and Children of the Corn.
Okay, those are heavy.
These are seminal, foundational horror texts from the late 70s and early 80s, and they all share a very specific type of terror.
Yeah, those aren't just scary movies with a monster chasing teens in the woods. Those are movies that actively invade the presumed safety of the home and the family unit. A normal television set suddenly stealing your child. A suburban house that wants to murder you. A demonic child living in your own home. Creepy kids lurking in a mundane Midwestern cornfield. These films are all about the corruption of innocence and the violation of safe spaces.
Which perfectly aligns with the terror he brings to the role of Mayor Loftus.
Oh, I see the connection now.
The mayor's safe space, his idyllic, economically promising island town, is being totally violated. Reese is literally channeling the buried childhood trauma of watching The Omen in his living room and projecting that raw fear onto the ridiculous practical effects monsters of Widow's Bay.
That is incredible.
He is taking the very real dread of those classic films instilled in him decades ago and utilizing it as the emotional battery to power his comedic performance today. That's exactly why his screams feel so authentic to the audience, because on a neurological level, they actually are.
It is a masterclass in synthesis, just taking the suffocating dread of The Omen and meticulously placing it inside the bureaucratic municipal framework of Parks and Recreation.
It's a magic trick.
It sounds like an impossible equation until you actually break down the mechanics of how they trusted the actors to play the truth of the panic rather than playing the joke.
And it requires immense trust in the audience, too. The creators have to trust that you, the viewer, are sophisticated enough to process a terrifying monster and a hilarious mayoral meltdown without feeling like the show is mocking its own premise.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? I think the biggest takeaway from unpacking the creation of Widow's Bay goes far beyond just getting a solid recommendation for a new show to binge watch this weekend.
Although it is a very good recommendation.
It really is. Yeah. But it offers a highly practical lesson in how to blend conflicting ideas in your own life. Whether you are trying to write a compelling script, or perhaps you're pitching a completely bizarre, out-of-the-box marketing concept in a really serious business meeting, or you're just trying to communicate a really complex emotion in your everyday life, this show provides a very specific blueprint.
It proves that comedy, or levity in general, doesn't come from undermining a serious situation with a cheap, self-deprecating joke. It comes from doing the exact opposite.
If you have an absurd idea to pitch in a boardroom, don't apologize for it. Don't wink and tell everyone how crazy it is. Treat it with absolute, unwavering sincerity.
Play the truth.
You don't play the joke, you play the truth of the situation. If you can ground your bizarre idea in something highly relatable, the way Dippold grounded a demon attack in the mundane geography of a small town and the frustration of local politics, you can take your audience anywhere you want them to go. People will completely follow you into the absurd if the foundation feels real.
That is a highly applicable way to use this information. And it leaves us with something really fascinating to mull over as we wrap up, especially when we consider Matthew Rhys's comments about using his childhood trauma to fuel his acting.
Right.
He's reaching back to his memories of Poltergeist and Amityville Horror to find the absolute truth of his terror. But here's the thing. Those are the exact same tropes, the exact same stories that our entire generation was raised on.
We all watched them.
We all absorbed that same foundational media when we were way too young to process it. So if actors are actively using the terrifying media from their childhoods to fuel their comedic performances today, does our generation's collective exposure to those exact same classic horror tropes make us inherently crave that nostalgic dread?
Oh, wow.
Are we drawn to horror comedies like Widow's Bay, not just for the clever writing or the laughs, but because there is a deep psychological comfort in revisiting the monsters that scared us when we were kids? Only this time, we finally have the power and the permission to laugh at them.
That is a brilliant final thought to chew on. We are finally getting to laugh at the things that kept us awake at night when we were 10 years old. We started this deep dive talking about how strange it feels when a piece of media forces your brain to cross its wires, when you are laughing and screaming at the exact same time, and how unnatural that feels. But maybe it's not a malfunction of our wiring at all. Maybe when you perfectly blend the frustrating, mundane reality of a town council meeting with the sheer existential terror of a monster at the door, laughing and screaming aren't opposing reactions. Maybe they are just two very different, highly effective sides of the exact same human survival instinct.